Hello biologists, we're going to do lab 3.17 on chicken muscles and do a little bit of test prep for the MCA Science Test that you'll be taking in the next week or so. So let's do a little bit of review on muscles. Remember, they work in pairs. Flexors bend a joint in, extensors move it back out. Muscles are controlled by motor neurons, and motor neurons are part of the peripheral nervous system. Muscles are attached to the bone with tendons. The origin is the place the muscle is attached to the bone. This is the bone that does not move because of the muscle. The insertion is the location where the muscle is attached to the bone, and it does move. The bone where the insertion is does move because of the attached muscle. Let's make sense of this with the human arm. Right here, this would be the origin of the muscle. This bone isn't going to move. Here's the insertion. This bone is going to move. This is a flexor. It's going to pull your arm in. The extensor is down here. It's going to pull your arm out. We have a lot of the same structures. They're homologous structures to a chicken arm. And we're going to look at a raw chicken wing here in just a second. We have a humerus, we have a radius and an ulna. We have metacarpals, but they don't look quite the same, and our phalanges aren't quite the same either. Let's look at some human hands here. We have a whole lot of wrist bones here. All right, we have pretty complicated hands as humans, and we have lots of phalanges here, which are the bones that make up your fingers. Now, most people know that chickens don't have fingers, so we have some homologous structures, but not everything is the same. That's why birds fly and we can type. So let's think about some structure and function. What are some similarities between human arms and chicken arms? We talked some of the bones are the same. The way the muscles work is a little bit the same. We both have origins and insertions. What's the function of each arm, and how does that function relate to the structure? What do birds do that humans cannot, and what do humans do that birds cannot? Make sure you include all of these in the first answer on your lab sheet, which you're going to, of course, find in doc sharing. Of a chicken wing for just a moment here. I've got one that I've taken the skin off here, and you can see the muscles here, and you can see a little bit where they attach. This muscle here, you can see when I pull on this muscle right here, it extends the chicken wing. So this muscle is an extensor. You can see that the origin is up here. This bone doesn't really move. And the insertion is down in this bone. So when I pull on this muscle, you can see that it extends. When I pull on this muscle, it extends the chicken wing. So the origin is here. This bone is not moving. This bone and the top of the wing isn't moving. This bone down here is moving. I'll show you once again. I'll pull on this muscle. And you can see how that moves. Now a flexor does the opposite thing. Remember, muscles work in pairs. So if I pull on this muscle, it brings the chicken wing in. And this muscle also has an origin. On the bone it doesn't move, and an insertion, which you can't see very well, but on this bone that it does move. So a flexor, remember, brings it in, and an extensor pulls away from the body. So that's a chicken wing. It's got two sets of muscles for every movement, just like we do. A flexor that brings the muscle in, brings the extremity in towards the body, and an extensor which brings it out. You might have learned about flexors and extensors in PE class. Question 2 asks about what's different between the structures and functions of humans and chickens. And one thing you can think about when you think about how we differ from chickens, there's of course a lot of things, we don't have feathers, but when you're talking about the chicken arm versus the human arm, the chicken arm's designed to fly. It has very large muscles that attach to the sternum here, and the sternum on a human doesn't have that big plate that sticks straight out. This is called a keel on a bird, and it's for attaching the large muscles that make the wing fly, that can pull down the arms of the chicken. And since humans don't fly, we don't need that big breast muscle. Like when you eat chicken breast, that's what you're eating. You're eating the big muscle that helps chickens move their arms so they can fly. Humans don't fly, so we don't need big muscles right here. Number 3, we talked a little bit already about how muscles move a bone. Use the examples that we talked about in the chicken wing in your answer. Include terminology from flexors and extensors, our lesson on muscles. Muscles bend the wing in are called flexors. Muscles that pull the wing or your arm out are called extensors. Muscles attach on the origin, that's the bone that doesn't move, and the insertion is the end that does move. Bones and muscles are attached with tendons. So tendons and muscles, that's how tendons are those stringy things on the end of muscles that attach them to bone. Here's a tendon right here. You can see the muscle right here, and you can see the white stuff, the kind of the white stringy stuff here. I'll point to it with my pen. The white stringy stuff at the end of the muscle is the tendon that attaches the muscle to the bone. The next time your family has chicken, you might want to kind of look at it a little bit before you cook it and eat it. So, number 4 relates to some of the stuff we're going to talk about on the MCA test. What have engineers learned from wings and arms? Nature and science learn from each other. We solve problems, human problems, by looking to nature. We've made airplane wings that have rudders and flaps that work similar to birds' wings. Birds' wings change shape to control where they're going in the air, to direct them in the air. And so airplane flaps work a lot like birds' wings in some ways, although birds can change the angle of attack just by changing their wings, by the angle of their wings. Planes can't change the angle of their wings, so they have rudders and ailerons on the front of the wing to change the shape of the wing, since they can't change the angle. We've also designed robotic arms that look a little bit like our arm. How do your lungs, or chicken lungs for that matter, help maintain homeostasis? Well, you need a certain amount of oxygen in your blood because that oxygen supports cells which do cellular respiration and create ATP. If you don't have ATP, you're dead in 2 seconds. So your cells need a constant supply of oxygen coming in. In order to maintain that constant supply of oxygen, your circulatory system and your respiratory system work together to bring in air to the lungs, and eventually it gets down to the alveoli and gets absorbed by blood that's in your capillaries. There's a membrane between the veins bringing deoxygenated blood in to release carbon dioxide and pick up oxygen. And if your body needs more oxygen because you're out for a run or you're running up some stairs or you're working hard on your bike, you breathe faster and your heart pumps harder. Same with chickens. If they're flying, their heart's going to beat harder and they're going to breathe faster. Talking about chickens, let's talk about selective breeding because this is on the MCA test. Selective breeding has gone from the guinea fowl, the original sort of chicken that people started domesticating, to these broiler hens. And we've done that by selecting birds that had qualities we want. People like meaty birds because that's the part we eat. So more muscular birds were chosen and bred with each other. Selective breeding is different than natural selection because we pick which birds mate. We pick out the qualities humans want, not that necessarily work best in nature. This white chicken, if it was running around in Guinea, probably would get eaten very quickly. But because we take care of our chickens in barns, we can select for different qualities. So selective breeding is a little bit different because we as humans control who mates. The chickens don't always get to choose, especially if we're breeding for particular qualities. And we pick qualities that work for us as humans that don't necessarily work in nature. If you think about all the crazy dog breeds, you know that selective breeding doesn't always pick what would work best in nature. What does controlled mating, how does controlled mating change a species? Well, we get to pick who mates. We get to pick what traits are passed on. It's not nature picking, it's not the environment picking what works best, what survives in a particular environment. It's different than natural selection because humans are picking what qualities get passed on and who mates. All right, a little bit more review for the MCA test. Osmosis is the movement of water across a semi-permeable membrane. This means that some things can pass through a membrane, but some things can't. It's usually the little stuff that gets through and the big stuff doesn't. Water tends to move where there are fewer water molecules. Osmosis happens. You've got a lot of water molecules over here. Water wants to party with people that are different than it. It's like, if you're at a gathering with other students from another school, maybe you want to go talk to the other students so you can learn new things and figure out what kind of music they're listening to. So water wants to go where there is different stuff, where there's less water. So here's a situation where we've got a bunch of water molecules and they're next to a semi-permeable membrane. This, of course, they are not really actually water molecules, they're M&Ms. But we can use them to model osmosis. Here is a solution with some water molecules with some salt dissolved in it. And so this represents a semi-permeable membrane. The water molecules can fit through this membrane. And osmosis is the movement of water across a membrane. It's just water. Osmosis refers to just the movement of water. Diffusion is the movement of anything, but osmosis is specific to water. The water in this case is going to go over here to dilute this. Remember we talked about maybe going to a party where you want to talk to people who aren't from your school or aren't from your youth organization or team. Water is going to come over here and kind of mingle with the different stuff. Water goes to where there's more different stuff and less water. So you can see over time, the volume of water on this side would probably go down on this side of the semi-permeable membrane, and the total volume of water over here would rise. So water goes to dilute, and water usually can cross a semi-permeable membrane where maybe larger protein molecules could not cross the cell membrane. They're too big to fit through the holes in the semi-permeable membrane. And so if they're going to move in and out of the protein or in and out of the cell, they need help. and that would be protein channels and